put out by the New York Times, and this is also in an article they did, and it says, shouting freedom and other anti-government slogans, thousands of Cubans took to the streets in cities around the country on Sunday to protest food and medicine shortages in a remarkable eruption of discontent not seen in nearly 30 years. Now, this tweet by the New York Times got some scrutiny, right? And I'm willing to bet you can already guess why, right? It's that opening line, shouting freedom and other anti-government slogans. So apparently, according to the New York Times, the desire for freedom is an anti-government slogan. Now, there's going to be some people, as you discuss this with people, there's going to be some people come back and be like, no, they just said other government slogans. No. They didn't just say and anti-government slogans. They said and other anti-government slogans, right? So the New York Times is putting the idea of shouting for freedom, of demanding freedom, as somehow being inherently an anti-government slogan. Right, and I think Don Bongino actually did a good job of showing how this is demonstrative of the divide that we see in the United States right now with respect to how we view the proper role of government and how we view freedom. So is freedom by its very nature an anti-government slogan? Well, some people would argue no, some people would argue yes. I think within an authoritarian regime, you got a much better argument to make that is something that they're using to protest against the government specifically. And especially when we look at what's going on in Cuba. But here's what I find interesting. The New York Times has revealed to us the way they view this. And this is something, there's a reason why Bernie Sanders, AOC, the squad is all being quiet on Cuba. And that's because if your situation is so bad, where the government is controlling the economy, the government is controlling your healthcare, the government is controlling almost every aspect of your life, and the government regularly uses police and the military to crack down on any sort of dissent, then yes, shouting freedom can very much be an anti-government slogan. But when the New York Times puts it that way, it comes off with this pejorative tone, as if there's something wrong with that, or if there's something extremist about that. And the reason why I think Bernie Sanders, AOC, the squad, and everybody else that has previously praised governments in Venezuela and Cuba and whatnot are being so quiet about this is because without even realizing it, I think the New York Times has revealed what they really think about this. And it's this idea that freedom is something that the government grants you. No, that's not how this is supposed to work. The government is supposed to be established in order to protect your natural rights or your God-given freedoms. It's not a grant from government. But in putting it in this sort of tone almost makes it look like there's something, again, extreme about people in the streets of an authoritarian government shouting freedom, right? You even have one instance of someone carrying out an American flag, which again, I find interesting. I find interesting that in the United States, we're always hearing from people like Bernie Sanders, AOC, Ilhan Omar, et cetera, about how bad, racist, and horrible the United States is. And again, they say that's not what they're really saying. It really comes off that way. And how systematically corrupt and racist our institutions are. But then you go to a place that has all the sorts of policies that they tend to like. And they'll come back and say, well, we're not talking about repression of freedom of speech. First of all, I'm not entirely sure that they actually do support freedom of speech in the traditional way that we've understood in the United States. But let's give them that one. But on almost every other metric, when it comes to the government controlling healthcare, education, the economy, that seems to me to be the sort of things that AOC, Bernie Sanders, and the rest of them are advocating for on some level. And so, yeah, when they shout freedom, it is a direct repudiation of that sort of authoritarian system. And now some people will come back and say, well, look, that's why we want democratic socialism, not authoritarian socialism. Okay, great. Show me a country that actually has democratic socialism. Because it's not Norway, it's not Sweden, it's not Finland, it's not Denmark, it's not Western Europe. Those countries are market economies with a very generous welfare state. Right? You can make that argument. You can't make that there's socialist democracies or democratic socialism. So every time you see socialism implemented, it seems like the only way that the regime can maintain power and carry out its policies is if the government has an inordinate amount of power and ability to impose its will on the population. And it leads to disastrous effects.